I've always been kind of focused on reconciliation. Anytime you're in a relationship, there's conflict. And so reconciliation should be a part of life. It should be natural. But we don't always pursue it. I would say that I've been more intentional on that. And that's kind of the challenge. I think we need to own what is ours, but we can't own the things that we can't control.
Welcome to the Knowing Podcast. My name's Christene Marie. Each interview, each guest that comes here on the podcast is conducted Stephen King style, which means that I get to know them right along with you. There's no preset agenda. There's actually no real introduction of each guest. And the reason for this is that we withhold judgment. We withhold any kind of bias so that not only do we get to know them and remain curious about their story and what they have to offer us, but also we remain curious about ourselves. And by way of this podcast, we come to know not only our businesses, not only our relationships, but ultimately we come to know ourselves. Enjoy. Craig Andrews, I am so happy you're here on the Knowing Podcast.
It's great to be here, Christene. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we met because we were both speakers in Mark DeGrasse's AI event, AI and marketing event. And I believe I reached out to you on LinkedIn and introduced myself. And then we got to your story and it blew me away. And I knew I wanted you here because you have a miraculous story that I really believe needs to be told. And I know that you've told it. You actually have a book here with us, if you don't mind.
Yeah. It's a book that my wife and I co-authored titled Hope That Won't Die.
Hope That Won't Die, a survivor's story. Can you talk to us about that a little bit and also introduce yourself? Who are you?
So, Craig Andrews, my wife is Karen, and the sort of the intro to that book is August 10th, 2021. I was 11 days into my COVID illness, and it reached a kind of a critical point and had to go to the hospital. And I remember my wife dropped me off at the front door. I went in and I walked up to the desk, and it took me several breaths to say, I'm having trouble breathing.
Wow.
They took me back immediately. I was behind a curtain, and a minute later, I heard my wife on the other side of the curtain saying, "Where's my husband?" And they said, "We have him. You need to leave."
Whoa.
Because they weren't letting family in the hospitals back then.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize it at the time. I would not see her for another 2 months, and she wouldn't see me for another 2 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, so they admit me immediately. And, it was such a crazy time. They had her waiting in the car. We live in Texas, and this was August.
Yeah.
They had family waiting in the car in the Texas heat of August. And there was a short period of time where I thought they were going to give me oxygen, send me home. And then it became clear that I was like, I think I'm staying. And I texted her. I said, you should just go home. And so she had been waiting a couple hours out in the parking lot for me.
Wow.
And so that was August 10th. August 21st, I remember they transferred me to a different room. They said, we're going to give you something that's going to help you sleep. I wish I had known they were going to shoot my arm full of morphine. Morphine suppresses respiration, which is a weird thing to do when
you're struggling to breathe.
Yeah. And about 12:30 in the morning, they called my wife and coerced her into put me on the ventilator. And they told her, she said, well, he doesn't want to be on. She heard me screaming in the background, no ventilator, no ventilator. We had already talked about this. If you went on the ventilator back then, it was a death sentence.
Yeah.
And she said, he doesn't want to go on the ventilator. And the doctor laughed at her and said, if he doesn't, he'll be dead in 24 hours. And she said, well, how many people have survived? He said, none have survived. And,
oh my, Craig.
Yeah.
God bless Karen. Gosh.
Yeah. And so that was pretty dramatic. One of the wonderful things, she started texting family. She texted my brother and his wife and said, Craig's not coming home. They had known I'd been in the hospital, and she said, he's not coming home. they immediately called and they said, "Hey, we're coming to we're coming to Texas." They live in Maryland on the Eastern Shore.
Okay, yeah.
And they said, "We'll be there in 36 hours." They drove straight through.
Wow.
From the Eastern Shore, from Cambridge to Austin. And she said, "Well, you can't do anything for Craig." And they said, "Well, we're not coming for Craig, we're coming for you." And a lot of family, my wife's sons came, our neighbors were amazing. I have a buddy, lives down the street, he's a retired Marine. He just showed up, started cutting the grass for my wife the whole time I was in my coma, the whole time I was in the hospital. And the doctors had her meet with hospice to plan the day they were going to pull the plug.
Wow.
I'd gone into kidney failure, and I was on dialysis. And they drug her in her room, and they put my chart on the wall, and chart said prognosis, death, multiple organ failure leading to death. And it really is a miracle that I didn't die. But late September, so I went in to the coma August 22nd, late September. It's a little fuzzy when you wake up. It's not like somebody flips a light switch.
Yeah.
But I started waking up late September and starting to figure out what had been happening. And at this point, I was in San Antonio, but I didn't know. Wow. I had a trach, so I couldn't talk. And I remember the day I figured out I was in San Antonio, I had two visitors. There they were letting visitors into the hospital. I had two visitors. One came in the morning, and my wife had warned him. She said, "Craig's not who you remember. Keep it very, very shallow." And he didn't. He decided to go deep. And apparently, like 5 minutes into it, I whispered to her, I was like, "I'm tired. Make him leave." Because you don't have a filter.
Yeah.
And later that day, another friend came to visit, and I was listening to my wife give directions. As I heard the directions, I'm like, I'm in San Antonio. That was the first time I realized I was somewhere else.
But you were awake at this point?
I was awake, yeah,
okay.
At this point. Very weak, very fuzzy-brained. But yeah, so I woke up in San Antonio.
Do you recall anything between, because I've heard people say, talk to them while they're unconscious. They can retain, like they're listening, whether they know it or not. Did you experience anything like that?
Yeah, and my world existed in a series of dreams. And the dreams were reflections of reality, but through a very distorted lens. And so let me share one with you. Because this will reveal a lot about what came in and what didn't. So I knew I'd been sick, and I knew I had a lot of recovery to do. And so for some reason, they took me to Louisiana and they put me in a resort to convalesce. Well, this resort had an interesting room service. You could dial and get all sorts of things there. And my favorite thing on the room service was I could get these young ladies to come in and they'd spray raw cow's milk at my face. And it would make me feel better.
What?
And so I just kept hitting redial, getting some more of that raw cow's milk. And
they wouldn't actually spray it in your face. They would spray it on your mouth, yeah?
No, it was just kind of sprayed at my face.
And so you just had raw milk on your, like literally, did they wipe it off?
No, I don't remember that. I just remember feeling better. And after a while, they came in on the speaker in the room. I was up in Nashville in a Sonesta hotel last weekend, and there was a tornado warning, and they came in and they announced, everybody needs to get to the basement. Well, in the same type of speaker, they said, "Mr. Andrews, it's time for you to leave." And I said, I can't sit up. And they said, "Well, you need to leave." I'm like, I'm happy to, but you have to come in here and get me because I can't move. And they started getting angrier and angrier. And they said, "If you don't leave, we're going to tell your wife about your room service." There were other things on the room service menu. And I was like, "You can tell her. She knows I like raw cow's milk. There's no secrets there." And At one point, I tried rolling out of the bed. I thought if I fall on the floor, somebody will at least have to come in and pick me up. And then I heard the mumbling, and they said, let's get his wife. And Karen came in and she put her hand on my left shoulder. And she said, Craig, this is Karen. I'm your wife. It's going to be okay. When I told Karen that story, because I thought that was real. For me,
wow.
that was real. I thought that was what really happened.
Yeah.
She said, Craig, I said those exact words to you in your coma.
Wow.
And about the time of that dream, multiple times a day, respiratory techs would come into the room, usually young ladies. And they would put a mask of nebulized albuterol on my face.
When you said raw cow's milk, I was like, that's very odd.
And my brain just interpreted it as, which I've never had raw cow's. Well, I actually had after I got out of the hospital,
funny.
but I'd never had raw cow's milk.
Yeah.
But that's what I mean when I say, I was never in Louisiana, never had raw cow's milk sprayed at me, but you see elements of reality that came in. And I knew that I couldn't move. I knew I was very limited. And but the thing was, for me, that was real. And my dreams from my coma, I remember those like you remember reality from 3 years ago.
Interesting. That's an interesting way to put it. Okay.
Yeah. And so one of the things that happened when I was in my coma was we had the 13 servicemen killed in Afghanistan. We had the horrible withdrawal on 9/11, 2021. In my dreams, I'd been called back to the Marine Corps as an advisor. And I remember they were trying to get permission to bomb some village, and they were coming to me. For some reason, they needed my approval. And I didn't want to bomb the village, but they kept pressing, and I said something sarcastic. I said, well, I put it in Marine Corps language. I'll give it civilian language. I said, if it makes him feel good to bomb that village, let him bomb the village. Well, he went off and bombed the village, and they came back and told me, and I felt horrible. But those were elements of the war in Afghanistan that were coming in to my dream. Turns out I was in surgery on 9/11 when they did the...
Interesting. Okay.
And so my guess is people were talking around me.
Yes, and you interpreted that and took that in. That's so curious. So when it comes to... Okay, so that whole... I mean, gosh, that was 2 months of your life. However, how long would you say that really impacted? 3 months?
3 months total in the hospital.
Okay, so in terms of your reflection on that time, how would you say that impacted you? What are kind of the long-term effects of that experience?
Well, I would say the biggest thing that was kind of grabbing me by the lapels and shaking me was, I think anybody that's been married gets in little stupid arguments, has their little stupid fights.
Yeah.
It really puts those in perspective. When you step back and you're like, is this really worth it? Yeah. Is this really what's most important in the big scheme?
Yeah. Yeah.
The other thing is a lot of relationships, it kind of clarified. I would say that most people were absolutely amazing, overwhelmed me. But there were few relationships that I realized, okay, these are not relationships I should be investing a lot into.
And what were the indicators of that? Their involvement, their support of your family? Like, what were the key attributes, I guess you could say, that you now look at?
Well, I got 2 text messages, one on August 29th, the other on August 30th, from 2 different people. These were just glowing text messages. One was like, you're a better friend than I've ever deserved, and this, that, and the other. Both of these people knew I was in a coma. Both of them knew that all the projections were that I was going to die. So when they sent those text messages, basically just over a week into my coma, who were they sending the text messages to? And who were they sending them for?
Good questions, yeah.
Both of those people have been very scarce. They haven't been eager to kind of reach out and reconnect.
Yes. What was very meaningful? What was very meaningful for your wife during that time? Because I think all of us have been in situations where we're the, in one sense, caregiver, and at the same time, she couldn't do anything. So she's just sitting there being given this death sentence. And what was really meaningful for her there, for any of us who would want to come alongside someone in that position?
Well, they had originally told her you can't visit. And she's like, wrong answer. And so she worked her way in the hospital. She almost got arrested once.
Good for her. I love that. That's not politically correct, but I love her tenacity.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they gave her an hour a day. Sadly, it was usually right after they hit me with a bunch of drugs.
Yeah.
So when I was waking up, it was rare that, when I'd reached the point, where they have you squeeze somebody's finger and things like that, she was very late to experience that because they'd shoot me full of drugs like an hour before she came. And, but she would come and she would sing to me and she'd pray over me and she'd say words of encouragement.
What did that do for you?
Well, obviously I heard her. And, it's hard to know the exact formula. Heavy part of the formula of my surviving is a miracle. But I think part of that miracle is also that she was there speaking to me in the coma. As you said, people say talk to people in comas, and they should. Because I heard a number of things in the coma, some things that people shouldn't have said.
So in terms of the community around her during that time, so it was obviously helpful for her to go and be able to sit with you, and it was helpful for you that she did that.
Yeah.
What were the things that meant a lot? I know you said that it was meaningful that your friend went and cut the grass, fellow Marine officer. Well, thank you for your service, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah. So that was meaningful for you. What were the things, though, for her? If she was to be seated here, what would she say?
For her, there's a long list of people that just really supported her. Our next door neighbors were amazing. The family, and she mentions that in the book of, family's important. And sometimes we let divisions arise in family that we shouldn't. For her, it really took her relationship with my brother and his wife to a whole new level. We were all good friends before, but they saw her performing just amazingly. Everybody that watched her was amazed. It really bonded that. Her work. So I'm going to call out some of my NCR, National Cash Register. I usually don't have too many great words for big companies, but she took the first 2 weeks when I went in the coma. She took 2 weeks off, and that came to an end around Labor Day. And it's real interesting. Her oldest son was visiting at the time, and my brother and his wife were still there. And she told him, she said, "Why don't you all go home, come back for the funeral? I need to start living, figuring out what life looks like for me." And she returned to work, and her work said, "We're going to pay you full time, but just work half time."
Wow.
They did that from Labor Day all the way through New Year's.
No way. Oh my gosh. Yeah, you're right. I don't hear that from big corporations. Wow. That is amazing.
Yeah. And so what that allowed her to do was, and I think working was a good distraction for her.
Yes.
But that also gave her time to come sit with me and process. And there was a lot to process.
Did she do processing with you? Like, could you hear her processing things about your marriage, processing life?
She was very, very careful what she said around me. It was all encouragement.
You've mentioned a couple of times how often it is that we take family for granted, that we let these little splinters come and erode relationships. And I'm curious, what after the aftermath, right? We think about the stimulus and response. So your stimulus is you're going into the coma and you have this life-changing experience in between stimulus and response is choice. So what are the choices you're now making that are allowing for the response and the way you show up in relationships to be different?
I've always been kind of focused on reconciliation. Anytime you're in a relationship, there's conflict.
Yeah.
And so reconciliation should be a part of life. It should be natural. But we don't always pursue it. I would say that I've been more intentional on that. One of the people that texted me when I was in the coma, I sent them a letter and said, hey, can we sit down and talk? They wrote back and said no.
Oh. Yikes.
Yeah. And that's kind of the challenge. I think we need to own what is ours.
Yes.
But we can't own the things that we can't control.
How do you define forgiveness?
Oh, that's a good one. Forgiveness is wiping the slate clean. I think it's really important for your own health to not let those things stay in there and rot. And they do rot.
Right.
An angry heart is a cancer for the soul. And the challenge, there's asking for forgiveness, and then there's giving forgiveness, and then there's just kind of, I think I would bring it back to reconciliation. So this person, one of the people that texted me, while I was in my coma, they know I was in my coma, they know I was probably going to die, and just this glowing text, and we had an issue going, that had been going on for a few years. I'd always pursued that, pursued reconciliation. And it was about a year after I got out of the hospital, I was talking to Karen, and she said, maybe you should give it another shot. And that's kind of the hard thing. I can do my part. And I need to do my part to be able to emotionally move on, to get that cancer out of the soul.
Yes.
But they need, true reconciliation is
with two people
coming together.
Right. Did you ever reconcile?
No.
So they were the ones that said no.
Yeah, they came back and just said no. And it was basically a farewell letter.
Wow. It's interesting because that's where forgiveness is so critical, because you're still free regardless of whether reconciliation took place or not.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it does hold that weight over you. A colleague and I were chatting the other day, and they were talking about the desire to forgive someone and just really wrestling with it. I mean, it was appalling what was done to them. And, with that letting go, it's like, man, but how do you then ensure that it doesn't happen again? And, how do you have boundaries while forgiving? And it's very complex.
Yeah.
And I that's kind of why I like, in terms of this with family, in terms of those little splinters that just, they get under the skin, and they have the ability. I mean, if you don't address that, people have had very extreme action taken for a splinter, that's this tiny little thing, but we never addressed it. And so in that regards with your family, so that was an individual, and they effectively said no. Well, they did. They said no. And with your wife, let's take her for an example. So you mentioned that you have those little things when you're married, the things that do get under your skin, that are each little splinters in their own regard. So how do you engage with those splinters now?
I haven't fully learned my lesson, but I'm working on it.
That's fair.
No, we have a human nature.
Right.
And some would say a sinful nature.
Yeah.
And that keeps bringing us back to things. But I think it comes back to what's the end goal? And the end goal is always reconciliation. And and the reality is I want a vibrant relationship with my wife.
Right.
And I can choose to put up barriers to that, or I can choose to kind of work through that. And some of it is, there are things we just, we get a burr in the saddle on some things that, I don't know, we should probably not get that burr in the saddle.
Yeah.
They're just not that important.
Right.
And it's, a lot of it is, it's like the toothpaste. My wife doesn't close anything fully.
Yeah.
Well, that's easily fixed. We got our own toothpaste.
Yeah.
And she can do whatever the heck she wants with her toothpaste.
Yes.
It doesn't need to rob my happiness. It doesn't need to be a division between us.
I love that example because it's one of those very small, but still a splinter that can just really annoy you. That's every single morning, every single evening. So that means you could go to bed just a little bit annoyed, wake up just a little bit annoyed. And over time, it really has the power to erode. And it's like the toilet paper. Are you putting it with the flap up or down? Or, it's all those little things, though. It's not worth the fight. No, it's not worth it. And I love that you actually took the initiative to just get another toothpaste bottle, because that's very real. A lot of times people will just lay down and try to not let it bother them rather than taking radical responsibility and initiating change, even at a micro level, to avoid that being a conflict point. Growing up, there was an element of, we're so mature, we're overlooking. Yet it did kind of eat away a lot of times. And so there's an element of, hey, let's just eliminate the splinter. Let's just get rid of it rather than just, I'm going to be mature and overlook this offense. I think that there's something about just remove it. Get your own toothpaste bottle.
So here's something else that's really interesting in terms of relationship with my wife and commitment. I think we've gotten away from, an idea of, hey, you know what, there's some relationships we're going to be committed to, and there are lines in anything. There are lines that you can cross that, are hard to go back on. But the doctors had been telling my wife, first they told her I was going to die. Then when I didn't die, they said, well, when he comes back, he's not going to be right in the head. Some would say it was just a short journey back to normal. But funny. But before I had even woken up, she was already playing out scenarios in her head where, well, maybe our future looks like I drop Craig off at Home Depot, he works there for the day, and I pick him up at the end of the day, and that may be our future. And, for the first week or so awake, I had a trach, so I couldn't talk, but I could mouth some things. And apparently I was saying some weird things, and even when I could talk, I was saying some weird things, which really had to be unnerving her.
Yeah, no kidding.
What's funny, from my side, my first semi-lucid memory of her was, I just remember she was kind of like hovering over me like this. So one of the techs or orderlies had been in the room. He was wearing, blue scrubs with a little blue beanie, and he was riding around on a little rail around the bed, and he would move around very efficiently. And I remember she was watching him and copying him and moving around. She had a beanie on, but it wasn't blue. It was like a brown camouflage. And she comes over and hovers over me, and she's telling me all these things. She's like, my friend Robin is coming tomorrow. She's going to sit with you. I knew Robin. But I just remember thinking, oh, she's lost it. She's gone nuts. She was like manic.
Oh, because you were still kind of in that dream state.
I was a little loopy.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was no rail.
Yeah.
I was a little bit loopy. But I remember looking at her like, okay, since I've been out, she's kind of lost it. And I remember thinking, well, that's what we have. That's what we'll work with.
Interesting. So both of you really were coming from this place of committed and commitment.
Yeah.
Wow. You don't hear that very often, Craig. And I mean, from my experience, my 8.5-year marriage ended, and that was devastating for me. And it was, and it's encouraging to hear, because I do believe in love and I do believe in commitment, And frankly, I think what you said, it's so small. It's such a small example that you gave about the toothpaste but it really does lend to peace in the home and the willingness and the ability to maintain commitment where it's, I'm in this for life. So how do I make this wonderful? Yeah. You said, I want to have a vibrant life with my wife. I think that there's the monotony that we get in that, okay, well, what does vibrant even mean? What do I even want for my marriage? And when the mission isn't clear and the KPIs to measure success of that mission being accomplished, I mean, gosh, how do we maintain that commitment? How do we ensure that we live a life that is vibrant and full of the potential and potency that it's possible of achieving? So with that concept of mission KPIs for relationship, have you and your wife ever done that work together? Or is that more so something you're like, I want a vibrant life. This is what it means to me. This is how I achieve it.
That's a really good point. I don't think we have. I mean, we've not in a super structured way. We've talked about kind of general concepts.
Yeah.
But we haven't talked about it in that way. I mean, there's some things that, it's interesting. Something we've talked about, all the way back. So we've been married. Next week will be our 13th anniversary.
Yay.
So, and we were both previously divorced.
Okay.
Not by our own choice.
Yeah.
Her ex-husband crossed one of those lines. It's real hard
to come back from.
Yeah. I just got voted off the island. So.
Oh. I know the feeling.
Yeah. But, one of mine, when we were dating, one of the principles that's important for me is I think about relationships like ripples in the pond. When you drop the stone in the center, that's us. That's at the core. That's the first priority. Then the next circle is kids.
Yeah.
Then the next circle is immediate family.
I love this.
And for me, it makes decisions a lot easier. So when Karen and I were engaged, and her youngest son was about to graduate college, and I would normally go back east. I'd go back to, spend a week in Maryland, a week in North Carolina over Christmas. And I delayed my trip. She's like, why? I said, well, Daniel's graduating college. Well, why would you do that? I'm like, well, he's your son. Yeah. That's the next level relationship. I mean, for me, it was a no-brainer. And
wow.
And I feel like my brother and his wife, and my sister as well, exhibited that. My sister didn't come, but that's because, it was just not good timing.
Yeah.
She tried to come, and she really wanted to. It was just bad timing.
Yeah.
But my brother and his wife dropped everything, not just once, but twice. They came down immediately when I went on the ventilator. But when I was down in San Antonio, what they call an LTAC hospital, long-term acute care, Karen called him and said, I need help. I need somebody to sit with him. I can't leave him alone, because there are things that get skipped.
Yeah, yeah.
Like food.
Oh, no. Oh, my gosh. Is that all in your book?
I don't think I covered the bit about the food in the book.
Just missing meals, not being attended to.
Well, so here's the thing. If you know anybody that's in a coma, when they're waking up, the first thing you should assume is they know nothing. And tell them the same thing again and again and again. I didn't realize that all my meals were coming through a tube in my stomach because I had a trach in my throat. And but a nurse walks into the room. I don't remember this. Thankfully, Karen was sitting there when this happened. Nurse comes into the room. My chart says I'm anorexic. I lost 40 pounds in the hospital.
Wow.
And they and my face was sunken in. She said I looked like a POW.
Oh.
And nurse comes in. She says, hey, can I get you anything? She's asking a guy with a trach who can't talk. And I look up at the nurse and I go, food. The nurse laughs, says, we can't get you food, and leaves the room. And I apparently looked at my wife and I shook my head and I said, I'm starving.
Wow.
You know, for those that I was mouthing, I'm starving. And I was. They were starving me to death. And all of my dreams from that time, I was negotiating for food.
Wow.
And nutritionist came in the room 5 minutes later, fortuitously. And my wife said, hey, my husband just said he's starving. And so they upped the slurry going into my stomach. And my dream stopped.
Wow. That's wild.
But
thank God she was there to advocate for you.
Amen.
Gosh.
Yeah. But there were things like that. There were other things like they forgot a blood transfusion.
Oh, no. I'm glad you're here with us. Wow. Talk about a miracle. I mean, honestly, my gosh.
Yeah.
It's wild.
But she reached out to my brother and his wife and said, I need somebody to sit with them for those reasons.
Right.
They dropped everything, drove to Texas again, spent another 2 weeks with me.
I love the example and analogy of ripples in a pond. I've always thought of it as concentric circles, which is exactly what it is. But ripples in a pond sounds nicer. Yeah. and I love that because that's something where, you know, us and our marriage is in the very center. Because if we're not well, we're not going to be able to parent well, love our children well. I mean, look, we know what happened to our marriages, you know, if we weren't. And here's another element that I would add to the ripple. I actually believe that at the very, very center of the pond is you and me. Because if we think about it, it's our partner, us, and the relationship. Like there's 3 parties involved, 3 entities involved. So you look at the health of me, the health of my partner, and then the health of the marriage. But if I'm not doing well, our marriage is going to be suffering. And so it's kind of like marriage and the entity is the bridge that connects us. But if I'm not doing well, I'm probably not going to make much progress onto the bridge to be able to engage in our marriage, much less get over to him if he's not doing well. Right. And same for him. Like it's kind of like you cross through the bow of the relationship to get to the other person. Mm-hmm. And so we have to be so healthy to be able to move through the relationship if it's not well, to then get to the other person who's even worse, right? So we have to be so strong and robust in our own emotional and mental health that we can conquer those leaps when the marriage itself is not surviving and then the other person. And normally the marriage surviving, rarely does it not survive because of one person's unhealth. Usually it's both parties that are struggling in that regard. But I love the ripple in the pond analogy. And to that point, I've heard a lot of couples say kids always come first. Yeah. And I'm curious if, you know, you and your wife both agree that your marriage is the primary ripple and then it's the kids. Well, you've got your kids and she's got her kids. So how has that, do you have children?
I had a son. He passed away about a year ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry, Craig.
Yeah, thanks.
Wow. That's very recent.
Yeah.
How are you doing? In one sense, I hate asking that because it's like awful, obviously.
No, it's, you know, sadly, it was not an unexpected phone call. You know, one of the things that grieves me deeply is we've kind of rushed as a society to embrace all sorts of drugs. And somehow we've made cigarettes bad and marijuana good. And I haven't figured that out. I mean, right down the road from me is Joe Rogan, and he, of course, is, you know, a huge advocate of it. And the reality is, drugs destroy lives. And I personally believe that our bodies, our physiology has been optimally designed, geniusly designed. And I think the best thing that any of us could do is figure out how to live, you know, without that. And I understand. I mean, sometimes, you know, somebody that's a type 1 diabetic, you know, that sucks. You know, you got dealt a bad hand and, you know, you have to do some things. Somebody that's a type 2 diabetic, maybe you should watch what you eat, get a little bit more exercise, work on that. I mean, for me, I'm in my 50s and I'm not on a single drug. Even after going into kidney failure,
Yeah.
you know.
And honestly, getting shots of morphine, like that's surprising, you know?
Yeah. But, what happened with my son is he progressed onto some bigger drugs, and it'd been a long struggle for him. And,
That's devastating.
yeah.
Your family, does it feel like people are even closer as a result of that? I mean, you had your near-death experience and then literally experiencing death firsthand. How has that impacted your family on the relational front? And has it? If not, maybe we all learned our lesson earlier.
No, it's, my family, of course, was, very, very supportive. But that happened. Let's see, that was 24. So that was 2.5 years after my ordeal. And I think, any kind of shakeup about the importance of family relationships was probably triggered first by that.
Yes, right. That makes sense.
But anyway, kind of getting back to the question you were asking, that was actually a concern about, where do I rank in the kids?
Yeah.
And I think it's a challenge. I think it's, especially for women, I think it's a really big challenge. I think they're worried that whoever they marry won't love their kids like they love their kids. And there's some truth in that. I mean, but it can also, I think it's a question that a lot of people need to answer. If you're going into a second marriage and you have kids, unless you want to put another marriage in the scrap heap, you need to figure out how to prioritize your spouse. And it doesn't mean your kids suffer. If you're dating somebody that's not interested in your kids and is going to ignore your kids and doesn't want the best for your kids, get out of the relationship.
Right.
The issue isn't the kids. The issue is them.
Right.
And so, one of the wonderful things, especially Daniel, Karen's youngest son, we have just an amazing relationship. And it's just one of the great gifts in my life is my relationship with him.
How healing, too.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. Wow. And okay, so you've got those boys. How many?
She has two.
Two.
Yeah.
Okay. How have they been involved at all with kind of what you're doing on the business front, or what does that look like when you do engage with them?
They'll ask some questions, but it's, they have their own interests, doing their own things.
Yeah.
And
how old are they?
Wow. My wife's always the one that answered this, even in my own family. I believe 39 and 37.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're grown-up boys.
Oh, yeah.
Great.
Yeah. So the youngest was graduating college right about the time we were getting married.
Great. I love that. So to that point, your second book that you brought.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us a little bit about that? And also, what do you do? We've talked a little bit about some of what makes you who you are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm a marketer, and if I were a better marketer, I wouldn't have made a book titled "Make Sales Magical" because everybody thinks I do sales. And my point is, when you do the marketing right, the sales are magical. And one of the ways I think about it is marketers build systems, and the systems include systems that create emotional bonds with customers,
right,
and clients. Sales, they're the people that, meet the clients and close the deals.
Right.
So they're different roles, but the area that I specialize is for people that have high ticket services. We say like $20K to $2 million.
Okay.
2 million is arbitrary. 20K is less arbitrary.
Yeah.
But, higher ticket things, typically they have long sales cycles. They require a lot of trust to close the deal. Mm-hmm. And they tend to be in a commoditized space. Commoditized not meaning cheap, but just meaning there's a lot of people.
Okay.
So a couple examples, financial advisors. We don't work with loan guns, but we've worked with firms.
Right.
450,000 financial advisors in the country.
Right.
All promising basically the same thing, using basically the same tools.
Right.
Very commoditized. We have a client that does offshore software development. Thousands upon thousands of Indians do offshore software development. We know how to make them stand out and look different. And we know how to build rapid trust. If you think about both of those, if you're handing over your life savings to someone,
right,
you have to be able to build a lot of trust. If somebody's coming into your code base and it's going to be, impacting the software that runs your business, a lot of trust. And so we're really good at that. And one of the tools that we use, and that's the subject of the book, Make Sales Magical, is something called a first-time offer. And let me give a couple examples that everybody will get. They will immediately be able to relate to.
Okay.
Back when albums were popular the first time, there was Columbia House Records, and they had this deal, you get 13 albums for a penny, or sometimes it was $1. But, the idea was, join our record club, and your first 13 records will just be $1.
Yeah.
Well, if you're the type of person that's willing to build a record collection, that gets you 13 steps closer to your goal. And they ran that for years, and it was very, very successful. We would say that that's a simple offer, not complex at all. And but an example of a complex offer. There was a guy, and I just drew a blank on his name, gentleman in Las Vegas bought a hotel on the Strip. And at the time, it was like a Motel 6, and he decided he was going to make it a major player on the Strip. Today, you would know it as the Strat or the Stratosphere.
Oh, yeah.
And so he ran this special, and he said, give me $396, and I will give you 3 days and 2 nights in one of my deluxe suites. When you arrive, there will be a bottle of champagne waiting for you in your room. All of your drinks on property are free, whether you're gambling or not. Even if you're sitting in one of our entertainment venues, you pay nothing more for your drinks.
Wow.
Not only that, but for your $396, we will give you $600 of chips to use in our casino.
Wow.
Yes, that's the response. So if you look at that, that's what we would call a complex offer. There's 4 deliverables.
Yes. Right.
The room rate was like a 10% discount off list rate. A bottle of champagne is, I don't know, maybe $100,
Right.
But if you're there with somebody else and you like to drink, I think it's probably easy to spend hundreds of dollars on drinks.
Right.
And then $600 of chips in the casino. The response is, wow. It's overwhelming.
Yes.
You don't have to.
It's obvious. You don't have to think about it.
You don't have to think about it. So we would call that an irresistible offer. There's something else about that offer that I think is really, really clever. I'm frustrated. I forgot the fellow's name. It's in my book, but he knew who his most profitable customers were. He knew if he could get somebody in the casino, he was about to make a lot of money. If he could get them in the casino and drinking, he was going to make a ton of money. So if you're the type of person that likes to drink and gamble, this is a hard offer to say no to.
Right.
There's 150,000 hotel rooms in Las Vegas. I don't gamble, and I drink wine, but I don't think he was offering the wines that would excite me.
Touche.
And so I'm going to go look at one of the other 150,000 rooms in Vegas, which is good for him because he doesn't want me staying there.
Right. You're not his ideal.
I'm not his, he makes the most money when every room in his hotel is packed with people that like to drink and gamble.
Right.
So the best offers attract your ideal clients while repelling your non-ideal clients.
Right.
And so, and it's a complex offer. And we found if you have a high ticket complex service, something simple like 13 albums for a penny doesn't work.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And so
really, if you've got a high ticket offer, you need to have a complex there, or if it's a high cost, right? High ticket, then the offer itself needs to be complex.
Yeah.
Why is that, do you think? Like what with the human psychology aspect does a simple offer not make sense for high ticket?
Well, if somebody's going to spend a lot of money with you, there's usually multiple things that you're trying to solve at once. Mm-hmm. And so one of the traits of these offers is they have to solve a problem, preferably 2 or 3 problems. And so when you do that, it makes it more attractive. And we would say that the 4 or 5 deliverables should have a minimum of 4, maximum of 5. That represent 4 or 5 milestones that get them 4 or 5 steps closer from where they are to where they want to be.
Right.
And so that helps them start visualizing things coming together. The other thing is, we believe for the high ticket stuff, you want to have at least one of the deliverables be the product of a workshop.
Okay.
Now, I don't mean go run a conference space. This could be as simple as jump on Zoom and start working on things together. Ideally, you want to have the deliverables from that be their ideas, not yours. So the way I put it is, it's like you're putting the bumper guards up on the alley and getting them to roll the ball.
Right.
And there's a few reasons for that. One is it's just nicer to lead people to their own ideas. They feel better about the outcome.
Yes.
But 2, when it comes time to move forward, for them to reject moving forward, it requires that they reject their own ideas.
What is the number one stumbling block when you're working with your clients that you've seen?
They have trouble expressing how they're different. And
yes, I've seen that so often.
At the event that you're talking about, in my talk, I made up this scale. I call it the penguin to unicorn scale.
Cute. I love penguins.
Yeah. Well, penguins are cute.
Yes.
But they all look the same.
Yes. They're all wonderful.
And a lot of our business is a commoditized business, is a bunch of penguins.
Yes.
From the distance that most people are gazing, they all look the same. Unicorn is where you're like A.W. Gore, which is in Delaware on the Eastern Shore. When they came up with Gore-Tex, they patented it. The only place you could get Gore-Tex was from them.
Right.
And that's just the way they do business. They only sell things that they've patented. I think they've since sold Gore-Tex because it's the patent's over. That's a unicorn. But when I was in that session, I asked people, I said, hey, type in the chat, or on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being a penguin, 10 being a unicorn, who are you? Everybody put like 7, 8, 9. And I know some of you. You're definitely a penguin. I didn't say that, but that's how people view themselves. I had a guy.
Interesting.
I had a client that furnished offices. Hey, we'll design your interior and get your furniture for you. When I asked him, I was like, how many competitors do you have? Well, nobody. Nobody does what I do.
Yes. So many people respond with that.
Yeah. Like, dude, you're a penguin. And so the biggest challenge I have, and I mostly just avoid, I don't get into the debate with them. We know how to make them stand out. We just tell them, hey, we're going to do this. It's really going to help. And they generally don't object until there's one thing that they object to, but we work through that.
What is it? Are you able to say?
Oh, I can tell you. So an essential ingredient in building trust is you have to reveal a weakness, vulnerability, or flaw. And so if you're in a business where you have to build a lot of trust, and this was my talk in the other event, if people, once they figure out you solve problems they have and you've solved problems for people like them, their next question is, who are you? Can I trust you? And they go to your About Us page. And when your About Us page, most About Us pages are some version of we were good until we became great.
Yeah.
Reads like a plastic Superman in all of its plastic Superman greatness, and nobody believes it. So we do a very specific format. Our pages tend to be long, about 800 to 1,000 words.
Interesting. Okay.
And in there, we reveal some weaknesses, vulnerabilities, or flaws. And the biggest challenge, hardest sales job I have, is convincing somebody to let me put that on their website. Now, we've gotten better at that because the first time I ran into it, it was just purely stepping on the rake. I should have seen it coming, and it was a financial advisor. Their chief investment officer, he was easy to market. He was a computer science grad. He looked like a computer science grad. But one day I was in a meeting, and somebody was just telling a story about him. His name was John. And I'm listening. I'm like, oh my goodness, I just struck gold. And so I come back the next week and I say, hey, would you be okay if I change your About Us page? You're like, oh, yeah, sure. So actually, I already have a draft written. And I slide it across, and they read it, and they're like, Craig, this is really, really good. There's one thing we'd like you to take out. I'm like, okay. And I knew what was coming. They said, can you take out the bit about John being a gambler? I said, I could, but that would remove the biggest trust-building element of the story. Now, he wasn't a present-day gambler. It was, more of a fascination of youth.
Yes, right.
But, and they were convinced I didn't understand their clients. I was like, I promise I do. Unfortunately, there was a young lady there named Talia that said, Craig, do you have a way of testing it? And I kind of paused and thought about it. It's like, yeah, I do. And so I tested it and invited them over to review the results. The results were overwhelming.
Wow.
And
isn't that so interesting? Craig, that's brilliant. What is your flaw? What's your weakness? What's your kryptonite, perhaps? And what is it about that from the reader's perspective, from the lead's perspective? Why do they feel more trust, given to the individual? Why do they care about that?
It humanizes you. And there's a little lever in their brain that goes off, and they don't even realize it. That says, well, if he's willing to say this.
Right. He'll speak the truth.
He'll speak the truth. Yeah, he's not hiding anything.
That's so good.
Yeah.
That's so good. If he's willing to say this, then he's willing to speak the truth and he will not hide anything. I think that's probably one of the biggest takeaways, because so many times people are worried, am I getting the wool pulled over my eyes? Fear, like really, truly fear. And especially with finances, it's already embarrassing enough for someone to come in and look. Not always, but sometimes. I think it's rare that people are actually feeling very confident with where they are financially and like proud of it. And like, this is great. Usually there's, man, I'm not where I want to be, or among other thoughts. So for that industry specifically, and I'm thinking of coaches as well, the people who, we're the SMEs. So then us being able to say, look, I'm going to show you my cards. I love that. That's where the trust is built, because it's clear you're not hiding anything.
Yeah. And the impact for that financial advisor is we took them from 18 million to 60 million in a year and a half.
Craig, get out. Yeah. Well, your formula sounds like something I need to read, so I'm excited to buy your book. Anything else? Anything last pieces of mind, I guess you could say, that you want to include either on the relational front or the business front, even for you personally?
I would bring both of those together. Maya Angelou said, people will forget what you said, they will forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. And one of the things that happened that was bizarre, in the 6 weeks I was out, my trust in the doctors went through the floor. Mostly completely evaporated. My trust in my wife went through the roof.
Wow. While
I was asleep. And I think it's really how they made me feel, in that.
Wow, what a good point.
And when you have a good first-time offer, our test for that is if you had a really good friend come to you in need and you could solve it, your best advice should be, you need to buy my first-time offer. If that's not your best advice, you probably don't have the right offer.
Wow, what a word. That's so good. If you can't have your best friend buy your offer, it's probably not a good offer. Craig, this is really hard for me. I hate the thought of selling. I really do. I hate the thought of charging people money, especially for some of the things that I have no problem charging them money on, the very apparent marketing branding side. But some of the things that we're doing, knowing retreats, even what we're doing, I've been doing some one-to-one coaching, and man, I just feel so uncomfortable. And I know it is, I've seen it, I still am getting emails and texts from people saying this literally transformed my life. So I know, deep in my bones, I know. And I just, it's the whole charging thing. I don't know. I don't know. It's so deep-seated in me. Do you have any advice for me? What would you say to someone like me or me?
I would say you're not helping people when you do things for free. And I've seen this. So I mentioned one of the things that we do that really does change things is we write a unique About Us page that builds a lot of trust. And over the last year, I decided to gift a few people that.
Oh, I love that.
And it was 3 or 4. I don't think any of them were live on the website.
Wow. So you gifted it and none of them used it.
Yeah. And they all said it's great. They all, and I could tell it was more than just,
right.
But when you give things away for free, and this is why we charge for the offers.
Mm-hmm.
This is why we charge for the offers. It puts skin in the game. Behavior changes when money changes hands. It introduces accountability. And if you really want to change somebody's life, there needs to be some accountability. And you don't have to charge a lot. So for these first-time offers, we don't make money off those. And so sometimes I'll do one. I offered one recently for somebody that I knew would never be a client, but he'd been a guest on my podcast, and I saw he had a real problem that first-time offer would help him solve. So I offered it to him. He said no, which is fine.
Interesting, yeah.
I'll give you a better example. Going back to the pandemic, when a lot of businesses were struggling because all of a sudden we couldn't meet in person, and it just broke my heart. And so I put out an offer. I said, look, for $25, I'll get on Zoom with you for a half hour, and we'll figure out how to get you moving and getting revenue in your business. And I had people take me up on that. And I had one guy that was a speaking coach. He helped other people speak. And he's like, Craig, there's a pandemic. Nobody's speaking. We mapped out a path. He ended up getting paid during the pandemic.
Nice.
But I had another lady.
What a blessing.
Yeah. Had another lady had a problem. And when I said, well, it's $25, she's like, no, thanks. I'm like, okay, if your business is not worth $25 to you, it's not worth my time.
Right.
I'm obviously not making money off that.
Right.
But that small amount of money introduces some accountability, and it helps bring some clarity about who is really interested in making changes.
Craig, thank you so much for sharing this, because I think that I needed that, the correlation between charging with accountability. I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
Especially it's like you're paying for the gym. Either you're going to cancel your membership or you're going to go. Especially, and then that's part of it with it being a lower ticket. You're probably not going to take it as seriously. If people are paying you what you deserve, they need to put skin in the game because they're paying so much. So I love that. And I'm just so grateful for your time today. And I'm grateful for your story and who you are. So thank you, my friend.
Thank you. This has been a delight.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode on the Knowing Podcast. Here's the thing. While you and I can pursue therapy, we can pursue masterminds, network opportunities, there's a lot of external opportunities for us to further engage and propel our journey of knowing self, knowing our relationships, and knowing our business. But what I hope for you is that beyond all the external, that you take the questions asked during this conversation, any revelations that you garnered through listening, that you take it and you actually apply it and go inward, that you take time this next week to do some self-reflection, to get to know yourself through your own efforts, because you are worthy of knowing. I'll see you next week.